It's Friday, week 2 NFL football. We had the Chiefs and the Chargers last night. I'm nobody. I'm with Ron and Ted from Sports USA. Ted, what do you make out of last night's game? Any takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, we were a little concerned about Justin Herbert today, but I guess he's okay. X-rays are negative. If they thought maybe an MRI might be a better idea, uh, I don't know what X-rays are going to show, but he's got sore ribs big time. I don't know how he got through that last few minutes, but that was pretty gutsy. Chargers sort of fell apart. Really bad pass by Herbert for that pick six. Outside of that, he was great. Kansas City defense got better as the game got along, so that was pretty impressive stuff. And Mahomes was all over the place. He was either fantastic or what is he doing? But hey, that's the Chiefs. They find a way to win. And you know, one of the storylines that Ron and I talked about going into this season was Tyrann Mathieu, how much he's going to be missed on the defense, and how big of a difference that is compared to Tyreek Hill. They look like they haven't missed Tyreek Hill in some respects because they got enough receivers to spread it around the field.
What do you think, Ron?
Well, I'm going to disagree with Ted on the pass. I looked at tight end Everett's route, and it was terrible, and I tweeted it out. He needs to sit or he needs to make that move. He can't just wander around. And Justin Herbert saw what he saw and he thought he was going to move over on that play, and he didn't move over. He should have just sat right there. And that was the difference in the game. The Chargers played fundamentally sound for 60 minutes. I thought all their decisions, fourth downs, field goals, punts, whatever, were absolutely sound. But one play obviously changed the game. For me, it was a toss-up game. But for those who did have the Chargers in the game, I guess we got lucky. I don't know. I mean, we were unlucky with the pick six. And then somebody had said to us, well, shouldn't they have gone for a field goal at the end of the game instead of the touchdown? It never crossed my mind. But if I had thought about it, it would have crossed my mind. Yeah, you go that way and you take the field goal. But I thought it was an entertaining game between two very evenly matched teams.
And it should be AFC West, right? And by the way, not too many people are talking about Mahomes actually threw 3 interceptions and none of them counted. So that was sort of fortunate in that respect.
What did you guys think about the streaming issue? I saw a lot of people complaining about it. I didn't watch the game, frankly. I decided not to bet it, lean the Chargers, and I'm leaving leaners on the table, which is frustrating. But did you guys have issues with the streaming?
Well, it was on live in LA, so because we had a local team. I guess that's the rule.
Okay.
So we had it on Channel 11 in LA, so that wasn't even a problem. But I did end up purchasing Amazon for that, and then I didn't need it. So I watched a little of it, and it seemed okay. But I understand because I didn't see most of the game on streaming. I heard the audio was bad, and there were some other production low quality issues, but I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
I watched the whole thing on Amazon Prime, and I thought it was perfect. So I guess it just depends. A lot of people said it didn't get the full crowd noise of the crowd, but I liked the way it sounded. So I hope every Prime goes like that for me.
And I'm not a big fan of Herbstreit doing the NFL, but maybe it's just me. I mean, he was okay. I don't have a problem with it, but I don't think there was any chemistry between Michaels and him because there's a long time working with Chris Collinsworth, and they bounce off each other and they have fun together. There's not much personality with Kirk, and I don't know how that's going to work.
Whoa, you heard it here first. Media on media, cutthroat. It's Friday, and the theme this year, Ted works for Sports USA. He does the studio shows. He gets to mix in with the actual athletes ahead of time, and he gets some inside scoops. And sorry, jeez.
It might be for me.
So, Ted, the first game is going to be Tampa Bay at New Orleans. You're covering. That's a pretty darn good game. How how's your prep gone? What have you learned? What do you got for us?
Well, first of all, the game starts at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, 9:30 in the morning Pacific on sportsusa.live. You can catch my half-hour pregame show leading up into the game itself. Look, Tampa Bay in the Tom Brady era is 0-4 against the New Orleans Saints. So that's a fascinating stat. And, Tom Brady was 4-1 when he was with the Patriots. So for whatever reason, in division, it hasn't worked out at all for the Bucks. But it was fascinating to ask the guys individually. We'll get to the interviews in a second. Look, Tampa Bay's a little beat up. Chris Godwin probably not going to play. Mike Evans is practicing, and so is Julio Jones, but they missed practice yesterday.
Right.
So they got some beat up bodies after week one. But look, that's the way it goes. And maybe Gronk is warming up in the bullpen very slowly. Maybe somebody will give him a call in about several weeks. Who knows? It's always nice to have that giant target for Brady, of course. And then you got Alvin Kamara, who's also banged up. He's got some rib issues. He didn't practice yesterday. I don't know what his status is for the game at all. But I think it's an interesting matchup. Remember, New Orleans is one of my surprise picks in the NFC because somebody's got to be a surprise pick. And I don't like too many teams in that conference. And if they win this game, what a great start at 2-0. Not impressed with the Saints in week one. They barely squeezed out a win against Atlanta, but that's what you're supposed to do because Atlanta finds a way to lose. Doesn't matter who their head coach is. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Saints will do at home against the team that they have beaten solidly over the last 2 years. Ron?
Takeaways from last week. I saw good and bad from New Orleans. I liked the chemistry that happened with the wide receivers. It's clear the wide receiver room is so much better. Thomas, Olave, Landry, it's night and day better. They have an opportunity to put up an offense. A defensive-minded coach who, by necessity, because they got behind, went to the offense, and they could have more confidence in the offense. What I didn't like about New Orleans, very strange 0-4 sack ratio, very un-New Orleans-like. And that's something I'm going to be looking at, not only this week, but in the next couple of weeks to see what's going on. They did lose one offensive lineman, but they should be better at pass rushing opposing quarterbacks. The only takeaway from Tampa Bay was I've been on them for most of the time to play tighter in pass defense. I know Dak Prescott didn't have a good game, but he's generally an accurate quarterback. For Tampa to allow exactly 50%, 21 out of 42, I was not high. I think Chris and I were both not that high on Tampa Bay at the beginning of the year. We saw some flaws. But if that 21-42, 50% allowed is any indication, maybe Tampa might have a sneaky plus that I didn't foresee. We'll see. Those are my takeaways.
Yeah, their defense defense may be a lot better than we anticipated it was going to be.
Maybe.
But
maybe,
it's only
it's
one
also,
game. But...
Exactly. I think it's tough to judge against Dallas, who their offense doesn't look very good either.
No. What do you guys make out of the big comeback that they had in the fourth quarter? Do you guys look at that as a stepping stone that's positive going forward, or was that prevent defense garbage that was easy to overcome?
I think it was a combination of matchups. Just the fact that they're playing a team that's not very good. So they were able to do some things. I think also remember week one, let's not overreact. First half, guys are getting used to each other, building chemistry. They didn't all play together during the preseason. So I don't get caught up in that stuff. They started picking up the chemistry and they got better and better as the game went along. And then they're also facing an Atlanta team that's not very good. So I think it's a combination of both.
What do you think, Ron?
For me, I think it's a confidence booster for Dennis Allen to say, maybe let's not go so vanilla at the beginning of the game because he's a defensive-minded coach. I'd like to see him open it up more depending on who he's playing, matchup analysis. But otherwise, it's a divisional game, and these things happen in divisional games. We saw it all across the board. Indianapolis way down, and then they come back and so on. This is just what happens in divisional games, so I don't read anything else into it.
How about we go to the New Orleans, the first interview I did with Chris Olave. He was a Southern California guy, grew up in the San Diego County, ended up going to Ohio State, and he is so geeked about being in New Orleans because I think he has 6 or 7 Buckeyes in the room with him. So that's made him comfortable, and we talked about that.
How much does it help to have a bunch of Buckeyes in the room with you now, and who's been one of them that's been in your ear the most?
Man, it's huge. Just to have that culture out of Ohio State, that competitiveness. They love Ohio State, so it kind of brings it over here to New Orleans. They have the same kind of culture.
If it's playing, I don't hear it, Chris.
And Mike Thomas.
Sorry,
I'm hearing it.
I don't hear it.
Oh, well, we'll let it play a little bit longer.
Really a big brother to me. Since I came in, I've been training with him since I got drafted. So he took me under his wing, and he helped me a lot.
What'd you learn about your new team in the win over Atlanta? And congrats on that.
It's huge, man. I mean, it's just a bunch of fighters, man. Like I said, it's a competitive environment.
Yep.
Nobody wants to lose, so we always win no matter what. And
go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, that's Noah Fant. We're going to get to that game in a minute. So can you cue up Chris Olave? And
that is Chris Olave.
That was Chris Olave.
No, that was Noah Fant.
Okay, we have a little glitch here, but we could go on. I think at this point, maybe for this particular session, why don't we just talk about what we expect in this game, New Orleans against Tampa Bay?
Okay, well,
who wants to start?
Go ahead, Chris.
I think I'm waiting for this line to go back up to 3. Hopefully, I'm not sure it does or not. I think a lot of people are waiting for that 3 to reappear, but I think that there's going to be some support for Tampa Bay to, quite possibly to bring it up to the 3. So it's a hurry up and wait for me there. But I kind of lean and am looking toward the Saints side here. As you referenced, Ron, I'm just not a believer in these Buckeyes or Buccaneers. And, the fact that Dallas of all teams just kept holding them to field goals, that says a lot. And that's really concerning with the Tampa Bay offense for me. And I think the Saints, have a much better defense. I'm also kind of curious about the under here. What do you guys think about the pace of play? I mean, obviously we know they played a 9-0 game last year, and the other game was higher scoring, but it just feels like this game's going to be tight to the vest. What do you guys think?
I agree.
For me, I was surprised the line dipped below 3. According to my numbers, it should not be there. It actually should be a little bit higher than 3. I understand why it's that way, because I think Tom Brady is going to have a much tougher time generating offense against the New Orleans Saints defense than the Dallas Cowboy defense. And I do think, as you said, Chris, settling for field goals is all about not having Rob Gronkowski in the room. I mean, there he was in the red zone 4 or 5 times, and his security blanket isn't on the field. And I think we're going to see that when you face the better defensive teams, and this is one of them. I agree with you. I lean toward the under. I do lean toward New Orleans, but I think personally I'm cheated on the line, and I don't like to take odds that are not in my favor.
What do you think, Ted?
I agree with you. Yeah, I like New Orleans in this game, at least to keep it, close within 3 points. It's the kind of game where, one turnover could be the difference, but it looks like pretty much of a toss-up game to me. Give me the home team. Give me New Orleans coming off a confidence-boosting win, and Tampa Bay again. They're going to play without Godwin, and the other guys are banged up. I'm a little concerned about Kamara. I hope he's healthy, because if he's got a rib injury and he's only 50%, or if he doesn't play, I think that changes things, but we'll see about that. I would like to hear a minute or two of Shaq Barrett, if possible, if you could cue that up, because he had some interesting things to say about. He's the guy who got the hand up on Dak Prescott and broke his thumb totally unintentionally, of course.
Here we go.
Hey, Shaq, great to talk to you, sir. I love your game, man.
I appreciate it. Hopefully I'll just keep getting better.
Yeah, keep getting better, and you do the great interview here. You'll be taking over my career when you're done playing.
I don't want to take over your career, but you got to save a spot for me.
You got it, man. So how do you describe that opening night win at Dallas, and did you learn anything about your defense from that one?
I think first opening night went great for us as a team. I know it wasn't perfect, but it still was a game where we came out and showed dominance as a team, special teams, defense, and offense. And defensively, it just showed what we can be if we play the first play all the way to the last play with no down moments in the game. Like last year, we always had times where we're dominant, then there's times where we take our foot off the gas and give the other team some hope to be able to come back or get some scores and stuff. But we was actually able to impose our will from the first play to the last play, and that's something we've been working on consistently. Is consistency and just doing it like throughout the whole game, and I'm glad that we was able to get that done. Because that's the defense we could be every game as long as we on our P's and Q's every game.
Yeah, that would be outstanding. Hey, it happens so often. You happen to be the guy that got the hand, and in this case, the thumb of Dak Prescott. Tell us, at the time, did you think it was anything severe? And also, are you surprised that that doesn't happen more often?
Yeah, that's very unfortunate that happened. I hate when people get hurt. I've been there, done that.
Sure.
It's the worst feeling in the world, and I hope Dak get better as soon as possible, and I wish that didn't happen like that. But I did, because I actually got his hand a couple times in the game because it's coming for them trying to stop him from throwing the ball, hit the ball. So I actually got him a couple times, and the second time that I did get him was the time that he hurt his hand, and I didn't think that it was anything because it did happen early in the game, and it wasn't nothing from early in the game. So I thought it was just like just like the first time it happened. I thought everything would be okay, but I heard
Well, it's kind of interesting. I could have used some cliff notes there, or some words across.
Yes. Well, basically, Chris, what Shaq was saying was that, and I tried to stress, I'm surprised that kind of an injury doesn't happen a lot more often. You got guys just barreling in on the quarterback. And what Shaq said later on was, hey, they've made every rule so to keep the quarterback safe, but you can't have a rule where he can't throw the ball and follow through. So, that's it does surprise me it doesn't happen more, at least occasionally.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. When I was young playing sport, I'm so clumsy. My hands would just constantly bump into things. And, with that kind of speed and that kind of effort and physicality, it is surprising you don't get more injuries that are just silly like that.
Yeah, Shaq got him a couple of times too. He on different rushes, and he said he didn't notice anything different. And all of a sudden, here comes the backup quarterback. He goes, "Oops, I think he's hurt." So what are you going to do, right? But that's an interesting matchup. And Shaq Barrett, one of the top defensive players on Tampa over the last few years, he was geeked because we just calling him a two-time Super Bowl champ. He loved that. He says, could you introduce me a little more often, please? I think that's fun to hear.
Well, I think we've digested this game. Any final thought on this game, Ron?
Nope. Let's move on.
Okay.
The next
Seattle
game.
San Francisco.
Seattle, San Francisco. Give us the inside scoop, Ted. What's going on with this game?
Well, the weatherman called me last night and said, guess what? Probably more rain for the Niners, and they're getting sick of it already because they're drenched from last week at Chicago. So we'll see how much that affects them. Look, Seattle got lucky. They got the win. However it is, they're 1-0 in the division, and that's all that matters. Niners ended up playing one half of football in Chicago. They played okay in the first half, and then they stopped playing. And, you got to give credit to the Bears to get the job done. But it was a monsoon at Soldier Field, and the rain was just awful. So
were you able to have some conversation and get the feedback of, we assume that it's miserable and horrible and such, but what was the word in the locker room with the players that you're talking to? Is the weather really that dire and that difficult to play through for them?
Well, in general, no. I mean, as a matter of fact, we'll be hearing from, excuse me, gentlemen here in just a second. But the fact that it rained as hard as it rained for as long as it rained. I mean, there were puddles on that turf, and if you saw one of the touchdowns by the Bears, and the guy did a little slide right through the end zone, it was all water. It was just. I mean, we watched them warm up, and the ball was falling out of the guy's hands, the quarterback. So it was just awful conditions. That wasn't a typical rainstorm, and it's not going to be like that in San Francisco on Sunday. Yeah, I think there's like a 40% chance of rain, and it'll rain a little bit, but it's not going to be like that. But yeah, I mean, wind and rain, and Soldier Field's famous for weird conditions. It just was an awful week one weatherman report. What are you going to do, Ron?
Oh, I'm not going to spend much time on San Francisco, Chicago, because I thought Chicago, because of the circumstances and Trey Lance, were very live in that game. And if there's any weather, it's just the equalizer anyway, especially for the home team. So I'm very pleased with the way that went. I made no adjustments. We talked about that in the past. But Seattle, they may have just played their Super Bowl. I mean, basically, they knew exactly which way, what to do against Russell Wilson. They came out with an outstanding game plan. I really think Denver was caught off guard that the fact that Geno Smith came out throwing almost every pass. He was 17 out of 18 in that game. So I think Denver was outcoached. I mean, luckily we're not doing a Denver game this week because we could spend an hour talking about what happened with Denver. But I really like the way Seattle unleashed everything in that game. Now the question, as we get ready to talk about Seattle and San Francisco, what's left in Seattle's tank?
Well, that's one of the things I asked Noah Fant, the tight end of the Seahawks, who used to be with the Broncos, and he's also a Denver native. So I'm sure he's extremely disappointed he had to be traded out of town. But one of the things that I mentioned, I'm not sure we're going to get to that, but I asked Noah, I said, you guys got to worry about the old bounce back short week factor here. And you had the emotional win of your season. And now you got to go on the road in the rain, possibly in San Francisco. That's not a good combination of stuff. Maybe you can play that right now. What do you think, Chris? Noah Fant.
First, I want to get your reaction to the news today. You guys probably lost Jamal Adams for the season. How big of a blow is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely tough. Jamal's a great player, brings great intensity for our defense and in the game to our team in general. So that's definitely tough. And, we're definitely going to miss him a lot. But, definitely have some really young guys that are looking forward to playing. So, hopefully they can do well for him and fill in well.
Of course, Russell Wilson's return to Seattle, the big story last week, but I know some guy named Noah Fant who was facing his old team for the first time too. So what was it like inside your gut, and how satisfying was that win?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a unique experience playing against all my buddies back from Denver.
Sure.
I definitely grew up in Denver and grew some pretty tight relationships with those guys. So it was definitely a little weird, but it was a lot of fun. And I got to catch up with all those guys after the game and take pictures and stuff. So that was really cool. It definitely felt good to get the win. And, hopefully, it was one of those double-edged swords for me. I was hoping for a little more production to rub in a little bit to them, but, hopefully that comes over time. So I was happy to get the win, though, for sure.
Yeah, you'll get your opportunity.
Very interesting. You get to just go behind the scenes with these guys. How often are you having stuff that you can't talk about slipping through your ears?
That I can't talk about? Well, look, I don't get personal with any of the guys. And, I try to build a relationship with the teams, too. So you can't go overboard. I can't be doing this in-depth interview. It's only 2 minutes of it is going to air on my pregame show. So I usually do 3 to 5 minutes max, and try to just get, the stuff that I need. And I try to bring a little personality out of them too. Cause a bunch of them they're not media savvy and they don't want to give much. They just want the computer. I'm giving 110% stuff and I don't want any of those answers. That's not going to do much for my pregame show. So I try to bring a personality out of them and say, hey, we're just having fun here. You're a football player. I'm an idiot broadcaster. Let's have a good time for 3 minutes. That's it.
So Ron, what are you going to do with this game? You have any thoughts on this game?
I think I'm not going to do anything with this game personally. What I'm going to do is kind of look at what San Francisco brings to the run game. Does Deebo Samuel go back to being a part-time running back with Mitchell out of the lineup? He's on IR, and there's a big drop from Mitchell to the next guy. If it's raining, we talked about we've got to watch Trey Lance. We don't want him to get hurt. I mean, maybe some people do to get Jimmy G in there, but for Lance's development, he's got to be smarter in terms of that to really manage, and he's got to learn how to play from the pocket anyway. I think San Francisco is going to pass rush Geno Smith. That's what I'm looking at. And I think San Francisco is going to do a better job against the run than Denver did against the run. So I think San Francisco, with a day and a half less of preparation for Seattle, if you looked at the quotes, I'm interested to get your take on this too, Chris. If you looked at the quotes following the game, Seattle was still talking about the Denver win and Russell Wilson 2 days after the game. I think it's going to be a focus issue. There's a talent issue difference. But I'm not laying what I think is an inflated price based on my power ratings. So personally, I have no part of this game.
By the way, let me drop something real quick on the quotes. Got to be careful with that because it's not that they're talking about it; it's what they're being asked. So if they're being asked about the game, you can't get you know they're not going to say I'm not going to talk about it. So be careful.
Fair
with that.
point. Fair point.
I think the line's a little inflated also. The only thing I'm going to consider on this game is a teaser. I think it's actually a pretty good teaser option. The thing that I worry about with Lance is he needs his Gronkowski, his Kittle in, and we don't know whether he's going to be in. He's kind of seems to be trending out. But I think once Kittle gets in that lineup, he's going to be that security blanket that Lance is going to need that he doesn't have at this time. So I can't trust. I actually think San Francisco will probably cover pretty easily, but I would probably want to just try it out on a teaser type of thing. Week 2 is the hardest week of the year to bet as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not looking to add games that just for the sake of adding them at this point. But San Francisco on a teaser is the one thing that sticks out to me. Under 3, obviously.
I just don't see. I think it's a really bad spot for Seattle overall. You know, just the short week, the emotions, everything. Just it's like totally against them, and they're not that good in the first place. And they lose Jamal Adams, and they got to deal with that too. So you know, the combination of everything. I don't see any positives for them coming into this game. It's like I think they want to get it over with, and they'll say, you know what, a 1-1 start's pretty good for us this year when you think about it, right?
The Jamal Adams loss may not hurt him as much in this game.
Maybe,
because, Trey Lance, but down the road, it certainly hurts them. The circumstances aren't good for Seattle, but they have nothing to lose again, and they should play like it in the locker room. It's always compete with Pete Carroll. You say, okay, we have no chance again this week. Let's fire our best shot and see what happens. So you never know. That's why when Chris says he's interested more in a tease is because you don't know with Seattle. There's too many unknowns that, let me say you don't know with San Francisco. There's too many unknowns as whether or not they're going to blow anybody out right now. But this is their best chance. Yeah,
but there's a lot of unknowns with Seattle too, though. Although they do have a really, really good receivers room. And now the question is, if they have anybody who can get them the ball. Geno was great in the first half on Monday night. But after that, I think the reality caught up with him too. Do we have a minute or so with Fred Warner of the Niners?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's put that on.
Linebacker Fred Warner, All-Pro.
How difficult were the conditions in rainy Chicago last week? Because it looked brutal on TV.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I mean, I've been a part of some bad weather, in my time playing here and playing the game, but it was coming down pretty good last Sunday, and it was something that we just had to try to fight through, and I guess at the end of the day, they handled it better than we did.
Yeah, how disappointing was it? You had the early lead and it got away. And also, is it tough to judge a guy like Trey Lance under the circumstances because of those wet conditions?
Yeah, no, I mean we were playing a great game. You know, it just turned. We didn't play 4 quarters. We didn't finish the game. You know, and they did. They capitalized on their opportunities. And yeah, you can't judge Trey off of that game. I mean, I think he did some great things in that game. You know, of course, people are going to be quick to write him off because he's, you know, our first year starter for us and a young quarterback. So I liked what I saw from him.
Well, good. How have you seen the growth of Lance over the last few months? And you're facing him in practice, so what looks the best to you?
Yeah, I think just I mean, the ball just hits from his hand. You know, the power that he has in that arm, and you know, knowing where he wants to go with it. That's kind of the thing that he's been working on, is making good decisions. You know, but I really like what I've been seeing from him.
We're with 49ers All-Pro linebacker Fred Warner, and
do you think you in all these years you're in the locker rooms, does your BS detector ring loudly sometimes? What the feel is versus what you get told in interviews?
Well, remember, I'm doing the phoners here, so that these are not in the locker rooms I'm doing now. But yeah, for decades I've been in the locker. Look, there's a lot of political correctness and all that kind of stuff. You're not going to rip your teammate, and certainly not on national radio. You're not. But I think look, like Fred Warner, Shaq Barrett, these guys are pretty honest with me overall. You know, they're not going to go down and say, hey, this guy's his accuracy sucks. I mean, they're never going to go there, right? So I'm not going to ask them those kinds of questions, but I'll try to ask the kind of question that maybe they'll give me a little bit that you get to feel, well, yeah, if he works on this is going to improve, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's all how you ask it, and you know, maybe the timing. He may not be in the mood to talk. But I like Fred Warner. I've had him on a few times, and I thought he was pretty sincere with me overall, what they expect. I really like their defense. I mean, I think their defense is really – I mean, it's a top 2 or 3 in the NFC. So now the question is Trey Lance a starting quarterback in this league? That's a huge question mark. By the way, is George Kittle going to be playing this week? I think it looks pretty doubtful, and maybe the rain is part of that too, you know? Yeah. What do you think, Ron?
Well, obviously, Kittle's that security blanket that all young quarterbacks need. And if he's not there, they're going to rely on their defense a lot more.
Yep, absolutely. But the defense is impressive.
So we've done our 2 showcase games of the week, and I'm going to leave it up to you guys. First, Ted, is there anything floating in your brain about this week that's been left unsaid?
Well, I don't know about that. There's a game that I'm looking forward to because I want to see how the Pittsburgh Steelers bounce back off a very fortunate win, losing T.J. Watt. And, you know, they go home against the New England team. I know that Mac Jones didn't practice a day or 2 this week because he was sick. And I guess he had some back issues coming out of the last game. I just see this as an interesting matchup from a coaching standpoint. How are the Patriots going to adjust from what they didn't do in week 1? Which was pretty meager, certainly from an offensive standpoint. And the Steelers were all over the place. You know, they found a way to win, but, you know, if Cincinnati is in the game and they had 1,000 turnovers, that's a miracle in itself. That was our first game last week, if you remember. And the guys were just like, this is the craziest game we've ever seen. And what happened to that new offensive line of the Bengals, right? Same old crap. You got sacks every other play. And Joe Burrow's thinking, wait a minute, what season is this? So I'm really interested to see the Steelers and the Patriots game. What about you, Ron?
Well, chemistry takes time with the offensive line, so we know that.
Yeah, exactly.
The game that fascinates me the most, I mean, we could sit and talk about 0-1s becoming 0-2s, but the game that fascinates me is which team is going to be 2-0, Minnesota or Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Because I mean, what a huge jump, confidence. You know, Philadelphia goes 2-0 and Dallas goes 0-2. All of a sudden, you're looking at the other teams in the division. You're saying, you know, we're going to write off Dallas for a little bit. It's all about us. And if Minnie goes 2-0 and keeps that leg up over Green Bay, who's expected to win over Chicago, then Minnesota feels good too. And Kirk Cousins would feel good because he would win a primetime game. I know he's been badly maligned for that. And actually, if you look back, Cousins has put up 25 to 30 points in these primetime games, but the defense has been non-existent. I think this is just a fascinating game, Minnesota and Philly, and it may be the last offensive team gets a chance to win this game. I'm really looking forward to watching it. Got anything, Chris, on any of the games?
You know, you guys picked out the two most interesting games for me.
You should have gone first.
I typically don't watch, a lot of games. But if I didn't have money on either of those two games, I would find the storylines interesting enough to keep me watching. The Monday Night Football game is just going to be fascinating. What are we going to really know afterward is another question. We've got a domino effect of, what do we really know about these teams that even after this game, we may not know, what we need to know about at least one of the two teams. So that's what's interesting. I just have a funny feeling that I don't know why, but you've got the new coaching staff going out on the road, prime time. Philadelphia will be jacked up. The money came in on Minnesota early, and quite frankly, it looks a little easy, doesn't it? I'm not that much of a believer in the Eagles, but I have to respect the people that have done the work on the Eagles and have so much confidence in the Eagles. I just haven't gotten to that point yet. I'm more on the Minnesota bandwagon, and I think people in general are a little bit more on the Minnesota bandwagon, which moved that line. So likely Philadelphia comes away somehow. I can't stop thinking. What do you guys think on that?
Well, I'm looking at the NFC East, and I think there's a reasonable chance here that, and Ron mentioned it briefly, that we might have 3 2-0 teams and the 0-2 Cowboys. And then we start looking at all kinds of weird crap going on down in Dallas. Coaching changes and who knows what. They bring back Dandy Don Meredith from the grave just to start a couple of games. Who knows?
Yeah. I want to echo something that you said, Chris, is that how much do we really know after week 2? And I want to parlay that with something else. We've talked so many times about which teams care about trying in the preseason and which teams don't. How many quarterbacks, the stat was thrown out, 25% of the quarterbacks who didn't play in week 1, they lost, the games lost, the new coaches, everything else. All that stuff about who played and who didn't, it goes away after week 2. And now everybody's in condition. So whatever you think or whoever was behind the 8 ball, and believe me, there were a lot of teams that we took advantage of that were behind the 8 ball. That all evens out after week 2. And I think that's an important point to mention, is that these things change. Everybody's going to be back in condition.
I can still see wide variance happening with certain teams still. I mean, there's still a lot of question marks with a lot of these teams. And, we saw Kansas City kind of sputter a little bit last night, which I kind of thought that they might. Is Buffalo going to sputter against, I think, what I think is a really mediocre Titans team? That's going to be interesting to see. But like you said, Ron, we got to wait till after this week to really and I think it's going to take a third week on some of these teams to really a lot of the teams, quite frankly. But I'm in no rush, all in good time, and we'll figure it out.
Chris, I think you turn over your metrics a little bit after week 3. I wait till after week 4. So we're not in a rush. We're looking for little nuggets about where a team is heading. And I think we're going to have some fascinating data points for next week. But we still have a lot to learn.
Well, I
speaking of next week, Ted, on Sports USA, our doubleheader. Yeah, I was going to say next week our doubleheader is Vegas at Tennessee and the Rams at Arizona. Those are 2 games next Sunday. We'll go over that on Friday, and whatever. I'll hopefully have some more interesting interviews for you guys.
Well, I think we're all interested to see if Arizona can bounce back. They've got some good news with Ertz and Watt practicing yesterday, so. Hopefully they can rebound and make that division a little bit more interesting. So appreciate everybody joining us, and we'll be back next week with some more commentary and hopefully some good discussion and some good knowledge. So hope everybody has a profitable weekend, and appreciate you stopping by.